Yes, hi, we're here with Elana. Hi, Elana. Thank you for joining us and
Hi,
welcome.
great to be here. Thank you.
Tell us a bit about yourself and introduce yourself.
My name is Elana Frankel. I am an award-winning documentary filmmaker, a writer, author, editor, and I'm thrilled to be a part of the festival this year because it's in my hometown, New York, and the film that is going to be screening at the festival is all film made in New York by New Yorkers for New Yorkers. So we're excited that this is happening.
Great. Thank you for submitting. All right. So I guess my first question is, what made you want to be a filmmaker? How did that happen?
Oh boy. Well, couple of things. I grew up with a photographer and a documentary filmmaker in the family. And storytelling has always been a part of my life. But I think the most telling um, thing was when I started to realize that when I walked into a room, I framed up every time. And when I was walking the streets of Manhattan, I was playing a soundtrack in my head while I was walking. It took me a while to realize that that's what was happening. But once I did, it was clear to me that filmmaking was going to be my outlet. I had started out as a writer, creative director, still photography, short videos, but the longer narrative, personal telling of stories to me was where it felt right, where it all aligned.
So it's been a lifelong reality.
It's been a lifelong reality that is taking me a lifetime to get to. I haven't been making films my whole life, but when the time was right, I made my own. I'd been making films with other people. I had been working on other films. I'd been working on other projects, like I said, writer, editor, all of these things, creative director. But it wasn't until just now, 2023, when I started making the film and finishing it, that I can publicly say I'm a filmmaker of my own film, of my own documentary.
Some ways you answer this, but I'll ask anyway. So how long have you been doing this and how many films have you made?
So this is my first film that I've produced and directed. Like I said before, I had been working with lots of other filmmakers and lots of other content creators. Um, and it was great and it was wonderful. But this was the first time where, uh, from soil to shelf, I was able to raise the money, put together the team, create the narrative, film, edit, or direct, whatever, like I said, from soil to shelf. So it's a long time coming, but when it did, it hits really well. Cannabis and Creativity is a great short documentary that I'm extremely proud of.
Okay, good. Great. And so your friends and family, what did they say when you said, I want to be a filmmaker? They say, oh, become an engineer, go get a job, get a real job.
No, honestly, I think their first reaction was, "What took you so long to say that out loud?"
Uh-huh.
And then immediately, family members who have been in the business for a while and have a lot of understanding of how to get things done, jumped on board and supported and helped, and was really this was a really big moment for me. And so to have that support from family was amazing. And then next came the level of friends who were supporting because they trusted me, because they believed in me, because we'd worked together all of these years on other projects. When I finally came to them and said, hey, this is what I want to do, not only did everyone jump on board, but they happily and quickly understood what I was trying to do. And it was very exciting.
Do you have a support group where you live, a tribe of filmmakers, your tribe, the people, your go-to group?
Um, I have a front row. Yeah, there are people that sit in my front row for sure. And they've been with me and know me a long time. And they know what I need and how to support me while making a film, but also emotionally, and also like they know when to feed me, they know what music to put on, they know when I need to start doing some deep breath work. So there's a lot of film support and creative support, but also emotional support that is, as you well know, needed as you go through this process of trying to make something and then distribute it.
So what made you decide to make this film? I have everything, all the ideas that's gone through your head over the years. Why this film?
So one thing that I have always been curious about, because as I said, I've always surrounded myself with creative people. This idea of creativity and where it comes from is really interesting to me. Lots of creative people will say, I just woke up one morning and there it was, or the words just rolled off my tongue and it sounded great, so I went with it. And they're vague kind of explanations of the creative process. Lots of people who are creative have anxiety. Lots of people who are creative live in their own world in order to create boundaries to make things happen. But as I observed over the years, something that came up over and over again, and by all means, not everybody, but a lot of people that I worked with, a lot of people who I saw as super creative, were also consuming cannabis. And they were doing it for various reasons, health reasons, creative reasons, whatever. And so the anecdotal evidence has always been there that cannabis and creativity go together. We can see it on, Netflix, Spotify, Roku, especially Roku. Roku basically wouldn't exist if cannabis wasn't around. But we kind of know from anecdotal evidence that lots of creative people amplify their creativity or shut out the world or shut out the noise by consuming cannabis. But I really wanted to not only focus on that anecdotal evidence and hear people's stories, but also hear from science and also make sure that this is more of an evidence-based explanation as to what happens to the brain when you consume, when you inhale, when you ingest, and what makes you think differently. What is this concept of divergent thinking that the plant amplifies and supports that you can then focus on your creative outlet? And so it was finally the right moment with the plant becoming much more accepted, states legalizing. As we know, federal legalization is slowly marching on. So it would seem like the right time to start to talk about these things and talk to people about these things. And the hardest part was there are so many creative people and there's so many people who wanted to be interviewed for the film. The challenge was to edit it down to the six. And it was definitely, I could have gone on for hours. This could definitely be a 6-part docuseries. So I guess the timing was right. The stars were in a line. The plant was calling. Creative people were selling. So there we go.
There you go. Sounds like you've been very lucky with this whole process. So my next
Excuse me. Let's just say something.
You did a lot of work.
Definitely luck is part of it. I believe in luck, but I would say that's like 5% of this process. The 95 other percent is like
sweat equity.
Yeah.
I know, I'm a filmmaker. I get it. All right. So what was the hardest part of making this film, and what was the most fun part of making this film?
So for me, there were 2 challenges. The first was raising capital. And I spent a lot of time in rooms with people who understand filmmaking, understand that process, but didn't quite get cannabis and didn't quite understand this idea, or they're still too nervous to talk about cannabis. Mm-hmm. And then I sat in rooms where cannabis is fully understood and the filmmaking part of it, the ROI on it didn't quite fit. So it took a while to sit down in the right room with the right person to write that first check. And when those two, it's sort of like a Venn diagram. And when the overlap happened, Etain wrote that check really quickly because they understood not only the process and the topic, but they understood that the final film is focused on creating a world that we all want to live in. And that's what they want as a brand. So it really aligned. And then the second check rolled in after that, because once you get a first check, the second check is a little bit easier. But then I stopped. I capped it at a certain amount of money for various reasons. So I definitely had to beg, borrow, and steal during production. But the second challenge, as you alluded to before, is then distribution. I got great advice from Barbara Koppel, the documentary filmmaker, who said, make the best film that you can for the amount of money that you have. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I love that. So I did. And I made this incredible film. And then you're like, now what? Okay, I did that. I set out to do it and I did it. Good for me.
Right. Yeah.
And then it became this process of figuring out how to get people to see it. Film festivals for me have been an incredible experience. We've got accepted and have won awards at quite a few. And so I have had a lot of eyeballs on it. But it becomes then a numbers game and trying to get in front of the right person at the right time to actually sign another check or a contract that will then distribute it on a larger scale. And so that's the process. That's where we are right now in the process, is getting as many people to see it as possible, and then finding the right person. There's that overlap again, finding that right person who understands not only the filmmaking process and the topic, but then is willing to distribute it in a way that I feel like is true and authentic to the film.
Mm-hmm. And where was the fun?
Where was the fun? So a lot of people ask me, oh, this must have been so much fun to make. You were stoned all the time. And I was not. And I was very, I was very clear to myself in the beginning that I needed to sort of maintain a little bit of distance. I needed to be focused, and this wasn't about me inhaling or ingesting. This is about other people and their creative process. And I think part of the fun in that is actually capturing stories of voices that may not have had the opportunity to be heard on this scale. And for me, that's beautiful, especially because we're talking about cannabis, and everybody always thinks, okay, you're either have chronic pain and cancer, or you're getting high on a Friday night for, shits and giggles. And there's this sort of in-between place on the spectrum with stories to be told and scientific evidence to be provided that give a different picture of the plant. And for me, that's exciting to start to have those types of conversations. I think one of the most fun parts, though, was in the editing process. I thoroughly love that part of the process. Put me in a dark room for hours with an avid and an editor, and I'm like in my happy place. So that's where it really starts to come together, and that's where you get to really pick and choose the great parts of the story and what part of the story to tell and when. And so that for me is the most fun. I love that. And then the other fun part I will say is that first time your film is shown on the big screen in a theater. You sit and you look at it on the small screen for so long, and you know it like the back of your hand, and you can quote every line, and you know every piece of music and every edit. But there's something so incredibly magical about sitting in a theater with a giant screen in front of you and watching your film screen in front of an audience and hearing their reaction, and then afterwards hearing their feedback. It's really fun for me. I love that part.
Are you the type of filmmaker that you finish a film, you put it out into the world, and you say, okay, that's it. If I see any mistakes when I watch it later, I'm just going to think about it for the next project? Or are you the type of filmmaker that you sit there, you look at your film, and you go, oh, someday I'm going to get enough money and I'm going to fix that? Which type of filmmaker are you?
I'm the first, for sure. I'm not fixing anything at this point. If I'm getting money to do anything, it's another film. So the goal for me is to continue to make enough money to make my next film.
Okay.
And I think that the mistakes, quote unquote, are just moments. And so far, nobody has pointed them out to me, so I'm good.
All right. So in the indie film world, we all know that we're not going to become rich and be buying ourselves $1 billion yachts and private jets and flying around the world for the hell of it type of lifestyle. So what does success look like to you in the indie film world? What would you say success looks
I will be, like I said before, success to me is if people still write me checks to make films. That is success. Period. End of story.
like? Okay, there you go. That's perfect. All right, so somebody comes along and says, "Hi, Auntie Elana, I'm going to be a filmmaker just like you." What would be your what would you say to them? What would be your spin?
Well, it's a perfect time for you to ask that question because I have a niece who's about to enter film school, and she has made 2 short documentaries, which she refuses to show me. And so I think part of what I've learned through the process, but also from inspirations like Barbara Koppel, is that the technical aspects of learning how to make a film are always there. You can really learn that skill whenever you can from whoever you can. But the real interesting part to me is the psychology, particularly behind documentaries, is being able to tease out a story from somebody who might not necessarily have told the story before, who may not want to even tell the story. But the sort of psychology behind the process and the collaboration to me is something to focus on. The technical aspects, like I said, you'll always be able to learn them, practice, sit in front of whatever and talk to whomever and get the ideas and whatever. But the psychology behind it to me is something to focus on, and really getting to understand how to interact with people, how to get them to trust you, how to get them to tell their stories in a way that's memorable, and to just have that connection with humanity is the most important thing to me.
That was the last of my questions. I mean, basically, do you have anything you want to say? Any last words? Any wisdom to the filmmakers out there trying to say, "Hey, should I become a filmmaker or not?"
For me, becoming a filmmaker is not something that I take lightly. I take it very seriously, but at the same time, there has to be some joy and fun. So keep going until there's no more joy. And once the joy is gone, then it's time to move on. But so far I'm like really high in the joy right now. So I'm gonna keep going.
All right, great. Thank you for joining us today, Elana, and hope to see you soon.